At this stage, 50 days or so into this, that your administration has been damaged by this oil spill?
No. First of all, I'm not concerned about my politics right now. What I'm concerned about is what's happening down in the Gulf. And I guarantee you the folks in the Gulf have been damaged by this oil spill. And livelihoods are at stake. This is the largest federal response to an environmental disaster in history. From day one, we understood that this was going to be a major disaster. We have put unprecedented resources to deal with it.
Then why do you think there's so much frustration aimed not only at BP right now, but at your administration? There are people who are starting to wonder out loud if the oil spill in the Gulf could do to you what Katrina did to President Bush, or even what the Iran hostage situation did to President Carter.
You know, I have to tell you, some of this is just the nature of the 24-hour news cycle. You've got a camera showing oil spilling out in the Gulf, and people are understandably frustrated. And they're upset, and they have every right to be. But here's what I can say, that we have responded with unprecedented resources. And when you look at what most of the critics say, Matt, and you ask them, well, specifically, what is it that the administration could or should have done differently that would have an impact on whether or not oil was hitting shore? You're met with silence. And the fact of the matter is there has not been an idea that is mentioned out there by any of the critics that we haven't evaluated, and if it was going to work, we would have done it. Was the administration misled, in your opinion? Were you relying too much on information from BP, and from the start did BP try to downplay the situation? Well, here's what I think happened. Initially, the thinking was that, in fact, the rig had sunk, but the blowout preventers had shut down the well, because that's what they were supposed to do. So the anticipation was maybe 1,000 barrels might be leaking a day, but this is not going to be a monumental spill. As soon as people understood that the blowout preventers weren't working, that the valves that were supposed to shut down in the event of a blowout like this had not functioned properly, then I think people understood right then that this was going to be a significant emergency. In terms of our relationship with BP, our general attitude has been that they have an incentive to shut this thing down because it's going to cost them money, and I'm going to stay on them if it's the last thing I do in this administration to make sure they're paying off those fishermen.
Have you spoken directly to Tony Hayward, the CEO of BP?
I have not spoken to him directly, and here's the reason. Because my experience is when you talk to a guy like a BP CEO, he's going to say all the right things to me. I'm not interested in words. I'm interested in actions. And we are communicating to him every single day exactly what we expect of him and what we expect of that administration.
In all due respect, that feels strange to me, that here we've got the CEO of a company that's responsible for the worst environmental disaster in U.S. history, and I think I'm just curious why you wouldn't pick up the phone and in some ways just give them a piece of your mind.
Well, look, this has been the main critique of the administration, is giving a piece of my mind to these guys. Look, I would love to vent. I would love to just shout and holler because I'm thinking about this day in, day out. But my main job is to solve the problem.
Have you allowed yourself to even imagine what the Gulf region will look like if oil continues to spew until August, what it will smell like, what the economic situation will be like down there?
I have, and here's what I'll say. This is going to be a mess. It already is. But I've been down there, and the people are resilient, and these ecosystems are more resilient than I think we anticipate right now. If we act swiftly, if we act seriously, there are going to be marshes, for example, where the oil goes in and the sea life that's there is decimated for a season, maybe two. But potentially we can preserve those estuaries and those marshes so that 3 years from now, things have come back, things have bounced back.
Critics are now talking about your style, which is the first time I've heard that in a long time. And they're saying, here's a guy who likes to be known as cool and calm and collected. And this isn't the time for cool, calm, and collected.
Right.
That this is not the time to meet with experts and advisors. This is a time to spend more time in the Gulf, and I never thought I'd say this to a president, but kick some butt. And I don't mean it to be funny.
No, and I understand, and here's what I'm going to push back hard on this, because I think that this is just an idea that got in folks' heads, and the media's run with it. I was down there a month ago, before most of these talking heads were even paying attention to the Gulf.
We're very concerned.
A month ago, I was meeting with fishermen down there, standing in the rain, talking about what a potential crisis this could be. And I don't sit around just talking to experts because this is a college seminar. We talk to these folks because they potentially have the best answers, so I know who's asked to kick, right? So, this is not theater. Most of the decisions that I make on a day-to-day basis, I make because I have gathered the best information possible in very difficult situations. And my job is to figure out how can I move the federal government, the private sector, all the various players who are involved to perform some very, very difficult tasks. And I don't always have time to perform for the benefit of the cable shows. What I do have is dedication and commitment to make sure that the people who are actually being affected by this are going to get the best possible service from me. And as long as I'm president, that's the approach that I'm going to take to this job.
Is washing ashore, especially in Louisiana, where it is taking a devastating toll on people, animals, and the once beautiful surroundings. NBC's Kerry Sanders reports from East Grand Terre Island in Louisiana.
Well, I'm about 12.5 miles from the mainland here on East Grand Terre, and look at this ink spot. This is as bad as we've seen it, and this is the thick, goopy oil. I'm walking on sort of a little sand area here, and then I'm just going to step over here into the oil and just watch how my feet start to sink into this ooze right here. And this is the thick stuff. Look here. I'm taking, wow, look at that. And it's goopy, it's ugly. And as my feet are in this, they're hot, because the oil absorbs the heat of the sun. So we've had about 100 degrees, and the oil's up and around 100 degrees. The real concern, of course, is this oil here, this goopy, ugly, oozy, nasty stuff. It's getting on the wildlife, specifically on those birds. Now, as you know, a bird has sort of a natural repellent in its feathers that keeps the water out, and that's a little area, it's a little cushion that keeps it cool. Well, this oil here gets on those feathers, and they lose that little insulation. And then when you have this oil at 100+ degrees, the bird experts say, well, it begins to literally cook the birds in the same way that my right foot, which has gone down here into the oil, is starting to heat up. I'm going to back up here, back on this little sandy ridge here. This is a real problem, because not only is this the worst of the worst, and this ink spot goes on for such a distance, we know it's been here for at least 5 days. Governor Bobby Jindal asking BP, where's the pickup? Where's the cleanup? Today, BP says they're on the case, and among the things that they're going to use are like basically hoovers. It's kind of like a vacuum cleaner that's going to come here and sop this up, and then they get down into the underbelly of this sand and start getting, well, that stick broke there, but some of the sand that the oil has then penetrated. It's a mess, and unfortunately, it's getting worse. Kerry Sanders, NBC News on East Grand Terre Island.